Hello, and welcome back to Purpose of Heart, the podcast. I'm your host, Priscilla Allman, and I'm really grateful that you're here today because this conversation is for the moments that feel confusing, heavy, and honestly hard to make sense of. Today, we're talking about this: what to do when life doesn't look like what you prayed for. And you believed and you trusted. You asked God with consistency and sincerity. And yet things unfolded in a completely different way, naming the disappointment. There's a quiet kind of disappointment that comes with this. Not always loud, not always obvious, but it sits in your heart because you had a vision of how things would go. You prayed for a door to open, but it stayed closed. Healing, but the process feels longer than expected. Clarity, but things feel uncertain. Restoration, but things didn't just come back together. And if we're honest, it can leave you wondering, God, what happened? Did I hear you wrong? Why didn't this turn out the way that I believed? God is not intimidated by your questions. Let's start here. He's not offended by your honesty, and you can bring your disappointment to him. Psalm 62:8 says, trust in him at all times. Pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. That doesn't mean you have to hide how you feel. You don't have to pretend everything's okay. You can come honestly and still be held. Here's where the shift begins. Just because your life doesn't look like what you prayed for doesn't mean that God is not working. Isaiah 55:8-9, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are your ways my ways, says the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways. God sees what we don't. He knows what's ahead. He understands what's necessary. He protects us from what we cannot foresee. And sometimes what actually feels like a detour is direction when expectations meet reality. Expectation can be powerful, but it can also be a source of pain. Because when we hold tightly to a specific outcome, we can struggle to see what God is actually doing. We say, it was supposed to look like this. But God is saying, trust me with what it looks like now. And that's when surrender becomes real. Think about Joseph. He had a dream from God, a vision of the leadership and influence. But his reality looked absolutely nothing like that promise at first. He was betrayed, sold, falsely accused, and imprisoned. Nothing about his circumstance matched what God showed him. And yet God was still working. Towards the end of it all, Genesis 50:20 says, but as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good. What looked like loss was positioning. What looked like delay was actually preparation. God's no and not yet are not rejection. And sometimes this is the hardest truth to accept. God's answer may be not what we expected or what we desire, but his answers are always rooted in love. Romans 8:28 reminds us, and we know that all things work together for good to those who love God. Not some things, not only the things that make sense, all things, even the closed doors, even the delays, even the unexpected turns. What God may be doing beneath the surface. When life doesn't work out the way you thought it would or the way you prayed, God may be protecting you from something you couldn't see. He may be preparing you for something greater. He may be refining your heart and strengthening your faith. He might be redirecting your path toward His purpose. And often we only understand in hindsight. This is where trust becomes more than a word, it becomes a posture. Proverbs 3:5, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. That means trusting God when you don't have the answers, when you don't see the full picture, and when you do not understand the timing. Because understanding is limited, but God is not. Sometimes healing comes when we release the version of life we expected. Not because it didn't matter, but because holding onto it too tightly keeps you from embracing what God is doing now. Letting go is not giving up, it's making room for new direction, new understanding, new growth. If you're in that space right now where things not looking like how you prayed for, I want to remind you that God has not forgotten you. He has not overlooked your prayers, and He has not abandoned your story. He's still writing. And even in this chapter, there is purpose. One day you may look back on this season and realize what didn't happen was just as important as what did, because it shaped you, it redirected you, it brought you closer to God in ways that you would have never expected it to. As you go onto your day, hold on to this truth. Just because it didn't happen your way doesn't mean it's not unfolding God's way. And His way is always purposeful. I'll see you in the next time, friends. Until then.